The most dangerous weapon ever used in war didn't roar across oceans or crawl across borders. It arrived in silence, then split the sky open. In less than 10 seconds, the world crossed a line it can never uncross. 80 years later, the shadows of Hiroshima and Nagasaki still stretch across our lives, our politics, and our future. This isn't ancient history. This is unfinished business. This episode on the scars of a global storm fronts isn't about spectacle. It's about consequence. About how 2 bombs at the end of World War II didn't just end a war, but hard-coded fear into the DNA of modern civilization. By the summer of 1945, World War II had become a war of exhaustion. Europe was already broken. Nazi Germany was defeated. But in the Pacific, the fighting refused to die quietly. Every island taken came at a horrifying cost. Commanders were staring at invasion plans that predicted hundreds of thousands of casualties on both sides. At the same time, the United States was holding a secret that had consumed billions of dollars, the brightest scientific minds on Earth, and years of frantic development. The atomic bomb was no longer theory. It was real, and it worked. The decision to use it wasn't just military. It was political, psychological, and strategic. There was urgency to end the war fast. There was pressure to justify the cost of the program. And there was a clear message being prepared for the post-war world. Power had a new language now, and it spoke in nuclear fire. When the first atomic bomb detonated over Hiroshima, the explosion was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Temperatures at the center reached levels hotter than the surface of the sun. Buildings collapsed in an instant. Human beings were vaporized where they stood. What made this different from conventional bombing wasn't just scale, it was permanence. Radiation didn't stop when the blast ended. It lingered in bodies, in soil, in water. Survivors suffered burns that defied medical understanding. Illness appeared months later, then years later. Death didn't come all at once. It came in waves. In a single moment, war stopped being something that ended when the fighting stopped. Just days later, a second bomb fell on Nagasaki. By then, the meaning was impossible to ignore. This was not an accident. This was a demonstration. The second strike erased any illusion that Hiroshima was a one-off event. It showed that this weapon could be used again and again. The psychological impact was as devastating as the physical destruction. The war ended shortly after, but the cost wasn't confined to 1945. The age of nuclear fear had officially begun. 80 years later, the numbers still struggle to tell the full story. Hundreds of thousands died either immediately or from long-term effects. Families were erased. Entire neighborhoods vanished. Survivors lived with scars that were physical, emotional, and social. Radiation sickness rewrote medical textbooks. Birth defects and cancers appeared long after the rubble was cleared. And survivors carried an invisible stigma for decades, feared and misunderstood even after the war ended. This is, without a doubt, one of the hardest truths of World War II to face. The suffering did not end with surrender. After Hiroshima and Nagasaki, every major decision on Earth changed tone. Diplomacy became a high-stakes balancing act. Wars were no longer just about territory. They were about restraint. Nuclear weapons didn't eliminate conflict. Instead, they froze it. The Cold War that followed was built on a simple, terrifying logic. If everyone could end the world, well, no one could afford to start it. This concept, known as mutual destruction, kept the peace by threatening extinction. It worked, but at a cost. Fear became policy. Missiles replaced armies. And, well, humanity began living on a countdown that never quite reached zero. Today, the atomic bomb isn't a relic. It's a warning. Thousands of nuclear weapons still exist. Many are more powerful than the ones dropped in World War II. Technology has advanced. Human wisdom has not always kept pace. The lesson of Hiroshima and Nagasaki isn't just about destruction, it's about choice. The bombs proved what science can do when unleashed without restraint. They also proved that once a weapon exists, it can never be uninvented. Every debate about nuclear policy, every moment of global tension still echoes back to those 2 days in August 1945. The bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki ended World War II, but it opened a chapter humanity is still trying to close. It forced the world to confront a new reality where survival depends not on strength alone, but on restraint, memory, and responsibility. 80 years on, the scar remains, not just on the cities that were destroyed, but on the conscience of the world. History doesn't ask us to feel guilt for the past. It asks us to learn before the future demands a higher price. If you found value in this deep dive into the defining moment of modern history, make sure to subscribe to The Scars of a Global Storm Fronts. Share this episode, keep the conversation alive, and stay sharp, because understanding the past isn't optional anymore. It's survival.